Trauma occurs in many forms and sizes. Trauma can involve a one-time experience or a nightmare sequence of recurring events that consume years of our lives. Regardless of the specifics that were experienced by any particular individual, essentially all traumatic experience has several things in common. Trauma is less a function of what happened to us and more a result of how we respond to what happened. For example, two soldiers fighting on the same battlefield can have two widely different experiences that one soldier may largely put in the past, while the second can have every dimension of his or her life thrown into disabling chaos for years and years. Trauma arises when the experience the person experiences overwhelms the body's coping reserves. In that sense, trauma is an overflow experience. The person's inner resources are too small to safely contain the big experience. The result is that the experience overflows the capacity of the person's physical, emotional, and mental container. Symptoms of post-traumatic reaction follow. Trauma is a condition that intimately involves memory. To be more accurate, trauma occurs when the usual function of memory short-circuits, and an experience does not get encoded into memory in the usual way. Ideally, we encode experience into memory so that we don't have to keep re-experiencing the original event. The memory of the event sits as a memory trace, ready to be drawn upon if a situation arises when that memory might be useful to cope with a particular experience we are facing in that particular moment. With traumatic memory, the original event stays fresh in memory. The trauma survivor keeps re-experiencing the original event over and over, sometimes in the form of flashbacks, and sometimes in the form of flooding of mind, body, and emotions to the point that the person goes numb. Successful trauma therapy involves helping the original event to finally get metabolized as a true memory. It finally gets put away. The person finally feels freed from being shackled to the past, and the person's whole being is finally able to face the future more openly and more optimistically, rather than with recurring mortal dread. So you see, trauma is a whole person experience. It is more than bad or scary memories. Trauma can alter the way our bodies function. That is why, for a person whose IBS is affected or influenced by a history of trauma, learning to modify the way that trauma is carried in your body is so important. When it comes to IBS and trauma, changing the pattern of the trauma in the body, emotions, and mind is vitally important to changing the pattern of the IBS itself. In this session's guided practice, I will talk you through a practice that is designed to help you settle the physical, mental, and emotional dimensions of encoded trauma. The goal is for you, through repeated practice, to be able to notice a decrease in the intensity of your IBS symptoms, as well as a lessening of the grip of your past on your present and your future. Of course, it is important to emphasize that people with significant trauma histories ought to seek the assistance and guidance of appropriate health professionals. At its core, trauma disrupts our relationship to others, but especially to ourselves. No one should have to deal with trauma alone. For this practice, it is particularly important that you pick a time to do it where you have the time to be alone with yourself in a comfortable, safe, and secure environment. It is important that you not feel rushed. This practice works best when you can feel yourself slowing down and focusing in. That is when your mind is most ready to learn something new, and what you are about to learn and what you are about to experience is a particularly important new learning. This learning is about transforming the past. This learning is about freeing yourself up physically, emotionally, and mentally. This learning is about putting yourself in touch with those aspects of your history that have constricted and restricted your sense of self. This learning is about developing a new relationship with your core sense of self. After all, what happened in the past is only one part of you. This practice will help you to recognize that your true self is so much larger than any particular event or set of experiences that have affected you in the past. Take some time to settle in. By now, you have had a fair amount of practice at turning your attention to your breath, breathing slowly and gradually allowing your breath to deepen as you feel more comfortable and more at ease. Allow yourself to focus on your breathing for the next minute or so. You might focus on the way your breath fills your chest and then releases the air moments later. You might find yourself focusing on the changes in muscle tension, becoming really aware of the decrease in tension that you feel each time that you breathe out. You might find yourself noticing the way that your thoughts seem to slow down, that worry levels begin to drop, and that some of your fears and anxieties just float away as though carried off by a gentle breeze. Just allow yourself to continue to breathe, enjoying the way in which your body senses how to get more comfortable and how to calm down. Do you remember times when you may have skipped stones along the shore of a lake? For a few brief moments, you could count the number of times that the rock skipped along the surface of the water before the rock sank, and all traces of the rock's touch points on the water's surface disappeared. Or perhaps you recall simply throwing rocks into the water and watching the splash made by the rocks as they entered the water. The ripples caused by the rock entering the water radiated out, getting smaller and smaller as they did. So it wasn't long before all evidence of the rock's splash disappeared. I remember times when, as a younger man, I went camping along the Canadian border. There were times when a very gentle, languid stream would, as the water came around a bend, begin to move faster and faster, getting louder and louder until it became an unpassable rapids. And then, further down the stream, after it seemingly spent its energy, it would once again become quiet, gentle, and seem to flow much more slowly. It was interesting. It is interesting that water always continues to flow. The surface of the water does not get frozen in time. Whatever event disrupts its surface passes, and the surface of the water settles back down. Even the world's great oceans, tossed by winds into mountainous storms with towering waves, under the pressure of hurricane-force winds, do not stay that way forever. After the storm's fury has been spent, the surface of the great oceans settles down once again. These memories and images offer something useful to help you change the way you carry hurtful memories of events from your past. In your particular life experience, there was a time before the trauma occurred. There was a period of time during which the trauma was experienced. And then there is a period of time after the traumatic events stopped, and yet the memory contained in body, mind, and emotions has continued, maybe entangled with the pattern we call IBS. Just like with the skipping of stones, the current of a stream becoming a rapidly flowing rapids, or the agitation to the oceans caused by great storms, there is the time before, the time during, and then there is a time after when things can finally settle down again. You too can allow yourself to imagine the time before, the time of, and the time since particular events occurred in your life. As you continue to breathe deeply, you may be able to allow a particular aspect of your memory to come to mind. It need not, and maybe should not, be the whole experience, just a part, whatever part you are ready to explore. That part can do for now. You may notice the way the memory generates an increase in sensations in your body, or the intensifying of emotions. Just continue to focus on your breathing. Continue to focus on your breathing until you notice those physical or emotional sensations beginning to subside once again, just like the way a wave gradually settles down. Allow yourself to continue to connect to an aspect of your memory. Notice the intensifying of the physical and emotional aspects of that memory, and then, through your breathing practice, you can notice the way you can reduce and modify the intensity of the experience, of the remembered experience, and feel more and more settled. each time you engage in this practice, it can be like what happens on the lakeshore, a riverbank, or the shores of the great oceans. Whatever comes to disturb the water's equilibrium is temporary. It won't be long before the water's surface becomes calm once again. Use your breath as the regulator of that intensity. By slowing and deepening your breath, you can continue to reduce the intensity of the memory, the physical, emotional, and mental aspects of that memory, of that remembered experience. The more you practice, the more you can find yourself. Find yourself becoming less fearful of the former power that a memory held for you. The more you begin to experience this memory of the past as just that, a memory of what was, but is no longer, the more that memory can finally assume its proper place in your brain and mind. And once the memory is finally just a memory, you can begin to feel more free, more liberated, more at ease, and more ready to embark on the next step of your journey forward. The more you can begin to become the author of the next chapter of your life. Now, before ending this exercise, like the river I used to canoe when I was young, compliment yourself on having navigated through the rapids of the memories of your mind. The river or stream can again become languid. You can rest, allowing the gentle current to carry you forward comfortably and easily. And as you do, you can take deep pride in knowing that your gut is now finally, at last, freer to be able to let go of the past as well.